will begin with a question. This is the question that is posed dun sa ating announcement for today's service. Is being Christian synonymous to being holy? Pinost ko to kasi pag halimbawa yung mga kaibigan nyo o yung family nyo, I don't know if you've experienced this. Kasi Kristiyano ka, tsaka banal ka. Pag pray mo naman, yung aking kaibigan na may sakit, mas malakas ka sa Panginoon kasi banal ka. Is that very familiar to you? So iniisip ko, nakakatakot talagang maging Kristiyano kasi ang tingin sa'yo, banal ka. Di ba? Um, is being Christian synonymous to being holy? And ito yung ating tututukan. This is what we're going to talk about this morning. And also, ngayon sa ating conversation, we are called to do our parts individually. And one thing that we have to do is to, quote unquote, I don't like to use this word, to sanctify ourselves. Ibig sabihin, isa sa mga dapat nating gawin as members of the whole body is to, again, make ourselves holy. Antindi, ano? Parang, oh my gosh. Ilang taon ka ng Kristiyano, pero at the same time, when you hear the word holiness, it doesn't quite sink. And it scares you because it reflects to you your journey as a Christian. How was I in the last 10 years? Or how was I in the last 20 years? Meron pa ba ngayon, in 2025, na lumalapit sa inyo at gustong humingi ng inyong panalangin? Pag di na kayo nilalapitan ako, bakit kaya? Hindi na ako nilalapitan. So our conversation today, as Bebot said, is a series from this book, Prisoner of Joy, written by Joseph Snyder, and we are getting into the series of Ephesians. So halos lahat ng title ng aming conversation is surprise. Kasi parang, alam ba natin, nagugulat ba tayo pag sinasabi natin that we are surprised by unity? Now, we are surprised by holiness. As Christians, nakakagulat, pero sabi ni Paul sa mga Ephesians, and it follows that all the believers after the Ephesians has always been surprised by holiness kasi medyo hindi nila alam kung ano bang ibig sabihin ng being holy. So let me begin with my PM. This is something that medyo as we go through the conversation, you will understand why I put it this way. So putting off the bad is active, while putting on the good is passive. Putting off the bad is active, while putting off the good is passive. So isa sa mga sinasabi ko kanina that we are responsible for as individual members of the body is to put off the bad. No? And of course, as we put off the bad, something happens to us. And the good has been put on, or the good has been activated, or the good has been planted into ourselves. So, ang ating main verse for today, I put the instead in brackets kasi may mga verses that come before this. So, let the Spirit, and the Spirit is capitalized. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya it. He is God. He is He. Hindi lang siya force, but He is something else. Let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your own nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Sa lahat ng verses na ito, dito ko lang nakita yung word na holy when the title of our conversation is Surprised by Holiness. So, si Paul, he looked at this in three ways. A new way of dressing, a new way of talking, and a new way of walking. So we're doing Ephesians chapter 4, verses 17 to 32. I'm supposed to cross over to Ephesians chapter 5, but I will not touch the chapter. I want to focus on to something simple and something familiar to us, and something that we probably do not think about holiness when we talk about this topics, okay, or these items, or these points. a new way of dressing. So Paul likens our journey as Christians as the old man na nakasuot ng tattered rags. Tapos kailangan nating hubarin yung damit na yon and put on an elegant, new, crisp suit. A new way, parang the old man is now a new man. So he grounds holiness with a renewed mind. Ang nakakatuwa sa Ephesians, the verses speak for themselves. So you really don't have to analyze ano bang ibig sabihin nito. Paul was so straightforward, he was so direct, and it was so simple. Paul grounds holiness with a renewed mind. You are holy if your mind is renewed. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng renewing the mind? Verse 17, sabi ni Paul, with the Lord's authority I say this. Kayong mga Ephesians, live no longer as Gentiles do, for they are hopelessly confused. Okay, now, I want to point here that he was talking to the Ephesians na Kristiyano na. Okay, these are not Gentiles because they have already received the Lord and they have already known the Lord in terms of teaching. So, familiar, no? Parang tayo. Live no longer as the Gentiles. So, ang assumption, ang nakikita dito ni Paul is that these Ephesians are living as Gentiles, for they are hopelessly confused. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng renewing of the mind? In verse 18, this is the old clothes that the old man is wearing. His mind is full of darkness. They wander far from the life God gives because they have closed their minds and hardened their hearts against Him. And this is to the Ephesian church. And siguro ilang beses nang nagturo sa kanila si Paul, and ilang beses nang ipaliwanag ni Paul about Jesus Christ and about the truth that is Jesus Christ. And still he mentions this. Meron pa sigurong mga iba na their minds are full of darkness. What does that mean? If you look at the metaphor, pag madilim, hindi mo alam kung saan ka pupunta kasi walang ilaw. So nangangapa ka. Okay? And you grope in the dark. And if there is no light, you're not really sure where you're going. And if there is no light, it is so easy for you to be confused by what is around you. You just hear something na merong sound coming from the left, so you turn left, and then you see a rat, running past you, so you follow the rat. You are in darkness. Ganon din yung ating mga minds. Minds are full of darkness. And because they are full of darkness, they wander from the life of God, the life that God gives, because they have closed their minds. And when you have closed your minds, you have hardened your hearts against Christ. Ang hirap ng makinig sa Panginoon kapag sarado na yung isip mo at kapag matigas na yung puso mo. That is why it is even more difficult to talk about Jesus Christ to people who are self-sufficient, who have undergone so many experiences and have survived those experiences and have so much hatred against people kasi ang tigas na ng puso nila at kaya ko to. I can survive this without God. It is so difficult. It is easier for us to talk about Jesus Christ to people who are really honest about their need. No? Kesa sa doon sa mga tao who are so prideful, who are so proud, who are so self-sufficient, and who have usually mga matatanda, no? Kasi ang dami na pinagdaanan, no? Kung saan-saan na ako nakapunta, Inday. Huwag mo akong sisetnan about ng Diyos mo. Kasi ako, ang dami ko nang nadaanan na nakilala ko yung Diyos. Pero syempre, iba naman yung Diyos na nakikilala nila. But it's so difficult. But this is how it is. Most of the Ephesians are like this. Their minds are full of darkness and they wander far from the life God has given. So, ibig sabihin, they wander far from the life God gives. So, alam nila kung ano itong life that God gives. Still, ang hirap pasukin ng light sa kanilang kadiliman kasi nga their minds are closed and their hearts are hardened. And because of this, they have no sense of shame. Wala yung salitang conscience to them. It doesn't matter whether I do this. And they live for lustful pleasure and eagerly practice every kind of impurity. When you, and I encourage you to do this, when you jump to chapter 5 of Ephesians, it's a short chapter, it will talk more about lust, pleasure, and impurity. But I will not touch on that in this conversation. I will touch on something really kind of simple and really something very familiar. So they have no sense of shame. They live for lustful pleasure and eagerly practice every kind of impurity. Can you imagine how it was? And he's talking to the Ephesians, not Corinthians. Usually we know that the Corinthians are the wild ones. But and but Paul always emphasizes that this is how Gentiles live. And there is still that Gentile spirit. There is still that Gentile man. There is still that old man in you. But that, sabi ni Paul, isn't what you learned about Christ. What is it that you learned about Christ? You learned that since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, you learned that you have throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is, anong nagko-corrupt ng ating sinful nature? Lust and deception. Pagnanasa. No? And we are deceived by the wonders and the excitement of the world. Okay? We throw our sinful nature and your former way of life. And ano tong, what consists of the former way of life? We will touch on that later, which is corrupted by lust and deception. And I don't have to illustrate this, really. If you are familiar with your history, and if you're familiar with the powers and how the desire for ambition and the desire for power has corrupted the world. And when we look to ourselves, what are those desires that I want that had me groping in the dark? I want to be like this. I want to go somewhere else. I want to experience what it is as an independent person away from my family. Yeah, I will send money to them, but I want to experience what it is to be independent. I want to experience what it is to earn more, to work hard, to earn more because my ambition is to provide for them. There's nothing wrong with that, correct? But minsan, because of this desire and this ambition, you are deceived by what you see in the world. Yung kaibigan ko kasi nagpa-Canada na, citizen na siya ngayon, nakapagpatayo na siya ng bahay sa Ilocos. Tapos yung mga anak niya, kung saan-saang private na schools nag-aral. And that's okay. I mean, she probably deserved it. But probably this is not what the Lord wants of you. So you have to find that light. What is it that the Lord wants of me? Pero tayo kasi, yung light natin is what we see. And we are deceived. And we are deceived. Ganon din sa ating desire for material things. There is so much in the internet. Kanina lang nakaupo ko sa MTR, biglang may pumasok na message. I realized that you are in Hong Kong. Can you please register because we will have more shopping offers for you. Nagulat ako. Wow, meron na palang ganon inside the MTR. So it's like they're linking you to the to the material world. And it is tempting. It really is tempting. It's tempting to look good. It's tempting to have nice things. It's tempting to desire what others desire. I'm not saying na mali ito, no? But this is your old sinful nature. And then, sabi ni Paul, instead, ito na yung, anyway, this is our key verse. Hindi na naka-parenthesis yung instead. Let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Now, let me go back to my PM. Put off is active, meaning this is something that we have to do. This is something that requires effort. Because once we put off or we put away our old nature, yung Holy Spirit sa atin has more space to maneuver. And then, yung good na from Him works in us more freely. Parang ano yan, parang halimbawa may bote kayo, no? Tapos punong-puno yan ng kung ano-ano. Unti-unti yung ilalaba. That bottle, naka-squeeze in na dyan ng Holy Spirit when you accepted Jesus Christ. That's a fact. That's the truth. When you accepted Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit is now dwelling in you. How the Holy Spirit dwells is another matter. How do you empower the Holy Spirit to give you a new heart and to give you a new nature? You do that by putting off, by putting away the bad. Okay, ano kaya yung bad na to? No? So that yung Holy Spirit will have space and will have the ability, no, to work in you. Kasi unti-unting nawawala yung bad. So marami na siyang, there's much space for Him to work in you and to put in the good. That's why it's passive. It's passive kasi most of the work is done by the Holy Spirit. I don't know if you have experienced this in your life. I quit smoking, bad habit. I'm talking about habits now. 15 years ago. Okay. And I'm a smoker, really smoker. My husband calls me sugapa. It's the first thing I do when I wake up. I smoke through my pregnancies. 2 pregnancies. That's why I am so guilty kasi my sons have respiratory ailments when they were growing up. And then somehow 15 years ago, I realized that I have to stop. The effort is there. Nandun yung effort because the reason, when I look back, it's really vanity. I do not want to grow old looking ugly with my lips dark and all those wrinkles. And this was the time when, I don't know if you were already born, when the promotion of the Department of Health in the Philippines, Yossi Kadiri. So my eldest son was keep on every time he sees me smoking, he would go around the house, Yossi Kadiri, Mama, Yossi Kadiri, Yossi Kadiri. And then I don't really want to see my fingers yellowed by the nicotine. And I don't want to die with the memory, with my son's memory of a smoker. Na yung memory nila sa akin, this old woman smoking like crazy. So I stopped. It was cold turkey. When you say cold turkey, ibig sabihin biglaan. Effort talaga yung cold turkey. But the funny thing is, when I decided to stop, the new the the Holy Spirit in me. Hindi ko pa alam na Holy Spirit 'yon, no? The Holy Spirit in me made it kind of easy. Every time I have this nauseous na ako. Usually you team up smoking with coffee. Okay? When I have coffee and then I have a cigarette, the weeks before I decided to stop, I feel nauseous. And it's like I don't enjoy smoking anymore. I haven't even stopped smoking yet. The decision came at a time, nung pagdating ng decision, parang andali na lang. And after that, there was no more craving. There was no more craving, except that it took a long time before I decided. But that decision was putting away, even in my mind. It was already a renewing of the mind. And then, of course, after that, gumana na yung aking pagkain, tumaba na ako, gumanda na ako, joke. But you put on your new nature, sabi ni Paul, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. And this is just a habit. This is not something that we do. But it starts with this, usually. It starts with the very small things. So, a new way of talking. Ano yung in-emphasize ni Paul sa Ephesians? Paul emphasized speech above other behaviors as one that Holy Spirit must control. Speech above other behaviors as one that the Holy Spirit must control. Sabi niya, and one thing is dishonesty. So his first command to the Ephesians, tell the truth. Remember one of your commandments, do not make false witness against your neighbors. Dishonesty. Bakit napaka-importante nitong dishonesty at sa whole body natin? Dishonesty means you do not tell the truth. Meron silang bago ngayong, I don't know if this is generational. The young people now, they have this term, catfish. When they say, oh, that's a catfish, that's fake. You're being deceived by her. She's not really that beautiful. It's just that the photo in the Facebook, she did something. That's why she looks beautiful. It's a catfish. She doesn't look like that. She's not as tall like as what her photo says. So sabi ni Paul, stop telling lies. No. Paul quoted Zechariah. Zechariah was the prophet in the Old Testament who was encouraging the the Israelites to be mindful of what they're doing, and so that so that he would inspire the Israelites. Kasi wala na, the church has burned down, to rebuild the church. This Zechariah is a chapter of promises, of blessings and exhortations for the people of Jerusalem. Kasi through Zechariah, God declared his love and zeal for them. And he promised them that he would restore peace, truth, and holiness. And there is like a prophecy at the end of the chapter that in the future, this is Zechariah, Old Testament, the Gentiles will join themselves with the Jews. So Paul quoted this because when because the truth about Jesus Christ and the truth about any other thing is important as a witness to what the the next generation will hear about Christ. Kung hindi nagsasabi ng totoo yung mga Israelites during that time about the God that they know, yung witness nila hindi ganon ka-credible when kapag nakaharap na sa new generation, like the Gentiles now. So Paul is always, even Jesus is always referring to the Old Testament because the truth was never mangled in the Old Testament. The prophecies always stand as truth. So Zechariah, verse 25, chapter 8, so stop telling lies. He keeps telling the Israelites, stop telling lies about your God because they are Israelites. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are, there it is again, for we are all parts of the same body. Can you imagine? Sabi ni Liz, no? We are one unity. Paano na lang if we don't say the truth and we lie to one another? How can that foster unity? This is from Paul, Ephesians, and this is from Zechariah. These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to each other and render true sound judgment in your courts. Let me illustrate this. If we are one body, it is our duty to tell the truth to one another. Parang ang dali lang pakinggan, ano? So, if you cannot attend the class, you tell me, because I'm sick, teacher, because my employer didn't allow me to go. But do not tell me something that is kasi meron ka palang ibang appointment, kasi mamamasyal ka pala, and stuff like that, you know. When you do not speak the truth, okay lang, mahuhuli ka rin. I mean, maybe hindi ka mahuhuli, but your credibility already, ikaw mismo ang makakaramdam nun kasi you didn't say the truth. It's like yung credibility mo sa Christian nakalagay na sa alanganin. Sorry. I'll get to this later. I'll give this example later. Then the next, from lying, from telling the truth, the next that Paul emphasized is anger. Paggalit tayo. Don't sin, sabi niya, by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives foothold to the devil. Look, from telling the truth, and then he goes to anger. Napaka, this is so simple. Do not let anger control you. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Does that happen to you? When you're still angry, is it difficult for you to wait until the following morning and talk to the person? Or for anger? Kasi if 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 you don't wait and you don't let yourself cool down, it gives a foothold to the devil. This is always quoted pag merong mga couples counseling. Kapag ikaw ay galit, huwag mong hihintayin. Sabi ng iba, huwag mong hihintayin na don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Kailangan ayusin mo na agad. Kasi pag hindi mo na yan inayos, the anger gives a foothold to the devil. Now that is difficult. Yes, God. That's so difficult. Lalo na sa mga babae. I don't know, maybe I'm sexist, but it's really difficult for women. Kasi for women, lalo na if you're a Christian, because you might say the wrong words. You try to calm yourself down, eh, hindi ka pa kalma, nakaset na yung sun. Galit ka pa rin. No, galit ka pa rin. So, doon sa time na yung galit mo, may pumapasok na dyan kung ano man ang gagawin ng Satanas. No? The following day, kalma ka na. Pero following day, yung taong kinagagalitan mo ay wala sa simbahan. O yung taong kinagagalitan mo ay parang wala lang sa kanya. Di lalo kang nagalit. Ganon. But usually, when we wives talk about this, the husbands usually do not let that anger stay until the following day. In fact, they don't even know that you're angry. But the wives, but the wives, but the wives, lahat na, hindi man lang madiretso yung asawa, lahat na magdadabog, magaganyan, and they never, and then parang ang feeling nila, ang dami-dami ko ng cues. I have been giving a lot of anger clues and cues to my husband. He still doesn't know that I'm angry. He probably knows. Ayaw ka lang niyang patulan. Kasi ayaw niya na lalong lumaki yung situation. And this always happens in couples. Kasi yung anger hindi nako-confront. And so the anger festers. And then it becomes an issue. Every time there's something else that is different from what you're angry about, this comes out of the blue. And other issues come out. That's why it's important that you have to control your anger and then you have to confront it ASAP. Kung galit ka sa tao. Of course, you have to wait a little while. But do not wait until the sun goes down. Sabi sa Psalm, and again here, si Paul quotes the Old Testament. He quotes David. Ang cute talaga ni David. Kasi etong si David, sinabi niya to sa kanyang mga enemies. He didn't say this to his people or to his soldiers. He told his enemies, hey, wait, don't sin by letting your anger control you. Think about it overnight and remain silent. Don't do anything yet. He told this to his enemies. Parang tayo, no? Parang tayo, kapag nakikita natin yung taong galit, cool ka lang, day. Cool ka lang. Bibigyan mo pa ng tubig. Ganyan. O sige, okay ka na. Sabi naman niya, galit pa rin ako, galit pa rin ako. Anong gagawin ko? Okay, galit ka pa rin. Anong magagawa natin dyan? Galit ka pa rin. But remain silent. Kasi if you don't control that anger, kung ano-ano yung lalabas sa bunganga mo. And that is bad talk. You know that. How many of you have been angry? There were so many things that got out from your mouth until now. Parang nagsisi ka. Why did I say that? Di ba mga nanay? Ganyan ka talaga, lumayas ka sa bahay ko. Ang dami-dami ko ng sakripisyo sa'yo. Pinakain kita, pinaaral kita, tapos ito yung gagawin mo sa akin. Get out of my house, tapos naglayas nga yung anak. And then we're all in, oh my gosh, he left the house. Why did I say those things? Because you did not control your anger. Don't sin by letting anger control. Next, stealing. Hindi ko alam, iniisip ko while I was studying this, bakit kaya naisip ni Paul, why would stealing come to his mind when he talked about telling the truth and when he talked about anger? What is it about anger and telling the truth that made him think about stealing? Okay. Sabi ni Paul, if you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good work, good hard work, then give generously to others in need. But before I go there, bakit kaya naisip ni Paul yung stealing when it comes to telling the truth and anger? Nanakawan na ba kayo? When you are being lied to, do you feel like, when you are being lied to, other than being betrayed, do you feel like something was taken from you? Right? Para kang ninakawan. Parang ninakawan yung iyong self-worth. No? When you are being lied to. And then when you are being attacked by bad words, by curses, you feel like your self-worth has been taken away from you. But here Paul talks about stealing as in literal stealing. And we steal because of our need, because of our want, because you want a shortcut. Kung pwedeng madali lang naman to kesa sa magtrabaho ako ng ilang oras. Ay eto, nandiyan na sa harapan ko, nasa bulsa ni amo. Sobra pa sa ilang kinakalculate mo pa kung ilang oras mong pagtatrabahuhin yan. You know, I'm saying this because the number one offense in Hong Kong from domestic helpers is theft. Number one is theft. A lot of theft cases. And there are gradations. Theft by finding. May napulot ka lang, tas hindi mo sinoli, tas nakita sa'yo, octopus card, whatever, you can be charged with theft. Then there is theft from the shop. Okay. Pero medyo mataas kasi meron pang burglary. Yung next sa shop theft, is theft from the employer. And this one is kind of serious because the sentence is always prison. Kulong yan agad. Why? Because nilabag mo yung tiwala. Breach of trust. That's what they call in English. You have breached the trust of your employer. Nilabag mo yung tiwala ng amo mo. That's why when you steal for your employer, if someone steals from her or his employer, that is serious theft. Okay? So, Paul says, if you're a thief, at meron ka talagang, we're tempted, right? I'm always wondering why it's so tempting to steal from your employers, from the employers in Hong Kong. Siguro inisip ko, probably because employers really have their stuff lying around. Kasi ang dami-dami nilang alahas, hindi naman nila nilalagay sa safety box. Tapos meron silang mga golden ornaments na naka-display. Tapos they're kind of most of them really. And tayo naman na laki sa hirap. And these are new to us. And once it is within our sight and within our reach, the temptation is too much. That's why marami sa atin na nagnanakaw. Pero sabi ni Paul, gamitin mo hands, kasi hands are usually used for stealing. Gamitin mo yung kamay mo for good, hard work. And then, another cure. Sa mga nag-exhort kapag giving, give generously to others in need. Bakit nakita ni Paul that this charitable giving is a proof that the thief has already turned around? Kasi when the thief begins giving generously to others in need. Siyempre, pagkatapos niya nagtrabaho ng hard work, hindi yung ninakaw niya, ibibigay niya generously. Give generously to others in need. Yung concern niya for his own need and for his own want, lumilipat sa ibang tao. So if you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good hard work. And then, kaya nga tayo ay ini-encourage to give, no? Give generously to others in need. Kasi pag nagbibigay tayo sa iba, nawawala yung self natin dun sa picture, dun sa equation. Okay. Then the first was spoken, speech, lying, deception. The second was anger, and the third was abusive language. Sino dito ang lumaki sa bahay na surrounded tayo? Our environment is surrounded by abusive language that it feels like it's the most natural thing in the world. Naalala ko yan because when I was newly married, I stayed for a while with my in-laws. Okay. And my father-in-law is paralyzed. And yung abusive language sa kanya is the normal part of himself. But this was something that was shocking to me. Not because I was a Christian, but because hindi ako sa ganung bahay. And to my husband, this was something that I didn't know. But I realized that this was something that he consciously avoided when he became a father. And this was something that he consciously avoided kasi this is what happens in the house. Si Papa, meron siyang tindahan kasi hindi siya makaalis. Meron siyang tindahan, tapos nagpaparent siya ng comics. Okay? Lahat ng klaseng comics. So, my husband his literature was based on that comics that his dad was renting in his mall. Every time, malilate, magdi-deliver yung bata kasi may nagdi-deliver sa kanya ng bagong comics. 1 week pa lang, yung itutuloy, binabantayan na ng iba, hindi pa nakaka-deliver ng comics. Magwawala na yan si Papa. He would say lots of things, lahat na ng mura, addressed to whoever in the world. So abusive language was, lalo na sa ating Kristiyano, if we grew in this kind of household, it feels like it's a normal thing. Kasi maraming nagsasabi sa atin na expression lang naman yan. Okay. It's just an expression. So let me tell you about abusive language. Let Paul tell you about this. Sabi ni Paul, if you are a Christian, and if one of the things that you have to put off, to put away, is your use of foul or abusive language. Look at your texts, the messages that this is so easy kasi natatago na yung abusive language natin sa mga emoticons. At natatago na sa mga abbreviations. So don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful. So, emoticon na lang na prayer. So that your words will be encouragement to o kaya yung heart. Minsan ang hirap na kasi minsan talagang gusto na nating magsalita. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful. Kung wala kayong sasabihin na good and helpful, what do you do? Quiet. Shut up. Kung wala kayong sasabihin na words of encouragement to those who hear them. Eto, I sort of did this. This is what you have to put off. This is active on your part. You have to put off lying. You have to control your anger. You shouldn't steal, and you have to put off abusive language. If you do that, unti-unting nagpuput on yung truth sa inyo, which the Holy Spirit works on. The self-control, the hard work, the charitable giving, and the edifying speech. Sabi ni Paul, I skipped verse 30. I'm gonna get back to that kasi yun yung aking concluding verse. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. And then, Instead, sabi niya, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. So, a new way of walking to the Holy Spirit. Let me begin with this. Ito yung nangyayari. This is a progression of hateful attitudes and action. And we have been in this progression. It's so easily to slip. It begins with, sorry, it begins with malice. Ang ibig sabihin ng malice, a general feeling of ill will towards someone. Wala lang. Sabi natin, hindi ko alam ba't ang bigat ng dugo ko sa kanya. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe somebody told you that she's this kind of person. Or maybe she did something to you that you feel so hurt and betrayed. So it's a general feeling of ill will towards someone. Pero you did not confront that. So it hardened into bitterness. From malice, naging bitter ka na. What is bitterness? It's a resentment of everything that a person does. Now you watch this person. Lahat ng ginagawa niya, nanggigil ka na, nanggigila-iti ka na. Tama ba yung Tagalog ko? Tama. Nanggagila-iti ka na sa taong yan. Everything that she does, konti lang, the way she dresses, the way she talks, the way she messages you, what she posts on Facebook, a resentment of everything that a person does. And I'm talking also about married couples, okay? Yung una, malis lang. Nag-umpisa lang sa simple snoring. Tapos biglang bitterness na, resentment of hindi lang snoring. Nakikita mo na hindi niya nililigpit yung medyas niya. Hindi niya nilalagay doon sa laundry. A resentment of everything that a person does. And then, this leads to what? Wrath. Outbursts of anger. Dito na lumalabas yung mga content. Ano ba yan? Lahat na. Minsan, kung ano-ano na yung mga sinasabi mo. And then, yung wrath na yan, yung outburst of anger na yan, cannot be helped, but it will boil into clamor, occasional, loud quarrels. Parang araw na lang. And then, after that, what's next? Magiging habitual, evil speaking na. Diba? Parang, ganun pala yun. And we think it's so true. But you slip into that progression some of the time. Sometimes with your loved ones, sometimes with your colleagues, sometimes with your friends. So parang kaya siguro yung progression na to, ang ugly, di ba? Ang pangit, these hateful attitudes and action, so that how easily we slip into it. No wonder, sa verse 30, it grieves the Holy Spirit. Kaya pag ito ginagawa mo, hindi lang kasi yung words, but but the progression that made you say these things. So in verse 30, sabi ni Paul, and do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way you live. Remember, He has identified you as His own, guaranteeing that you will be saved on the day of redemption. Nazil ka na ng Holy Spirit. You are marked as God's child. And because you are marked, you are part of the whole body. And because you're part of the whole body, you have the duty to protect the whole body, but by protecting the Holy Spirit, by not offending the Holy Spirit inside you. Now, lest we forget that the Holy Spirit is not some force. And ang pronoun niya ay hindi it. Okay? The Holy Spirit is God and is called God. Remember when Peter, yung si Ananias, na nagnakaw siya? And then akala niya he can do away with it. And Peter confronted him. And then, why did you think that you could get away with it? You think you could lie to God? God. You think you could lie to God? Because God is so overwhelmed and so, kung apo ko pa, so amazing that God dwells in us. You cannot lie to God because the Holy Spirit is part of the three-person God. He is God, lest we forget that. Next, lest we forget that the Holy Spirit has personal characteristics. He has a mind, he has a will, he can be angry, and he can be grieved. And one of these characteristics is that he can be grieved. Sobrang, pag iniisip nyo, di ba? Kaya yung conviction nandun, that's why there is such a thing as conviction. Alam nyo na mali yung ginawa nyo. Nako-convict kayo kasi ramdam nyo kung gaano kasakit yon sa Holy Spirit who dwells in you. So your awareness of the Holy Spirit is so, so important in your growth from the old man to the new man. Then lest we forget that He works in your life today. He makes known the presence of Jesus and make us more like Jesus. Ito na. Ito na yung passive working, passive na nangyayari as we are turned from the old man to the new man. Ang OPM natin, putting off the bad, yung sa sinabi ni Paul putting off the bad, the what is it that we have to put off? The deception, the lying. We have to put off the anger. We have to put off abusive language, stealing. Kasi pag pinuput off natin to, pag inaalis natin ito sa equation, pumapasok ngayon yung good. The Holy Spirit has space. You are allowing the Holy Spirit to nurture the good in you. And this may sound so, The Holy Spirit, yung gumagalaw sa buhay ko. And we always think of Jesus as something that's cognitive, something about the truth that we read from the Bible or that we hear from the pulpit. But the Holy Spirit is there all the time. That's probably why we sort of forget it. We sort of forget Him. Sorry, mali ang aking pronoun. We sort of forget Him, that He dwells in us. He dwells in us. And the more you give Him room, the more your journey to being an old man, to being holy, is there. So, ano yung challenge ko? Yung challenge ko is my statement. In every believer's heart, nasa puso nyo, the Holy Spirit helps get rid of the bad. So He could fill in the empty spaces with the good. The challenge is give Him room to work out the nurturing of this new man in you. How do you give Him room? You put off the bad. Ano yung mga bad sa buhay ko? In chapter 5, Paul talks about sinful morality and setting apart from the world. But I did not touch that kasi parang alam na natin yan. Impure sexual actions, greed, and stuff like that. Pero these little things na nag-accumulate, I want us to focus on this. Ano ba yung mga bad sa buhay ko na kailangan kong alisin, kailangan kong kubarin para yung Holy Spirit would have more space to nurture this new man in me. Then I'm back to the question. Is being Christian synonymous to being holy? Yes. Yes, gid. Yes talaga. Talaga. So pag sinabing Kristiyano ka, ibig sabihin holy ka. Being on the way there, meron ng parts of myself holy, but I am not still really holy. But that's how it is. That's our journey to being a child of God. So, kamusta kayo, mga kamatid? Kamusta ang ating mga bad? At marami na bang pumasok na mga good?